few years back I found my passion, security. So I think, yeah, a lot of people, maybe it takes time to find their passion and what their interests are. This is definitely an industry that requires a lot of passion, which is one of the things we'll talk about. But I try and get involved in the industry as much as I can, so lots of events from BSides Perth, BSides Melbourne, BSides Canberra, plus mentoring and other stuff as well. Yeah, getting involved, something I recommend everybody as much as possible. So yeah, that's me.
So I'll get the camera.
Yeah, okay. So as you can read, I won't talk about every point, but basically we'll cover some basics about security. The industry is made up of different parts. We're going to cover a bit of a breakdown about that, how you can sort of proactively build your own profile, building out a CV, mapping the market and finding your own jobs, not relying on recruiters or job adverts and things like that, building out a network, and also preparation around interviews, which is something that I think quite a few people need some help with.
Right, it's a bit of a tag team, it's only one microphone, so you have to bear with us. But yeah, so what's the information security industry look like? So for those that may not know, it's kind of like split into four main categories. You got your internal role, where you're doing, like from my perspective, like penetration testing or something like that. And there are different motivations between various companies of what they want to do, right? So you've got internal role, consultancy, freelance, and bug bounties. So you can go in either direction. Internal roles are usually for a large organisation. Me personally, I used to work for a large bank in Australia. It's an internal role, and it's very project driven. So I'll work for a bank. They're not a security company. They're not, like, their main goal is not to do Infosec. Their main goal is to basically do money. So what the realisation you have to come to working for a large organisation is what their core business actually is. And it's not Infosec, it's whatever they want to do, and that's the motivation. So you're a cost, fundamentally, and the work that you can do is intangible most times. Like, hands up who has a car, pretty much. Hands up if you have insurance on that car, and keep your hand up if you've made a claim. Okay, so not that many, but it's insurance, right? So you're paying for something that's intangible in the event that you get into an accident, and that's the same like purpose of an internal role. Flip it into consultancy, like Context or any other great consultancies around Australia. They are in the business of selling services, and those services are pen testing, advisory, essentially they're quote-unquote insurance salesmen. So, and then you have the freelancers. So you could work for someone like Mark Dowd, who was doing that keynote earlier. So they do a lot of really cool research. You could just be freelancing around Australia, around the world, and do whatever you want to do. And then we've come across this new phenomenon in the last 4 or 5 years around bug bounties, and people actually making a living out of it. Not a lot of people actually making a living out of it. There's only like a very, very small percentage of the industry. A lot of the others are just kind of dabbling into it. So the thing I really want to kind of get into is more of a reality check. So what I would like to convey here is, we are in an information age, right? So you get paid for the information you know. So if you don't know anything, you won't get paid anything. No one's going to pay you for the information you don't know. So I'd like to do a little exercise. I like these things. So everyone put your hand up. Cool. Hands up. Leave your hand up if you've ever been to a doctor. So pretty much everyone. And now keep your hand up if you went to that doctor for the flu as a medical certificate and then you went home in a cast. No one will say at that doctor, maybe one person. Cool. So you don't go to a doctor, you go to a doctor for professional services, right? Knowing that they know what they're doing. Not everyone can be a doctor. I can't be a doctor. I've got a good friend of mine who's a neurosurgeon. There's no way in hell that I could be a neurosurgeon. I'm just not that bright. So the thing I want to kind of convey is, like, from a penetration testing perspective, not everyone can be a pen tester, and then more importantly, not everyone can be a consultant. There's a really minute sets of skills you have to have in terms of consultancy. You have to be people facing. You have to actually be able to communicate to an audience, to people, to senior stakeholders to technical teams, and you have to kind of adjust your language accordingly. And then on top of that, being a pen tester, you have to know a lot about a lot. So you might be put into a situation where one day you're pen testing a web application, and then the next day you're testing and reverse engineering a thick client. So the skill sets vary, and you have to know essentially a lot about a lot. Right, yeah, so.
What we got for secret sauce? Yeah, so we spoke about. Can you even hear me? Yeah. All right, I'll stretch it. It's my chin. Okay. So look, passion is really important. There's people that I've spoken with, and I've asked them their reasons for wanting to get into security. And the reasons why you get into this industry is really important because it's a lot of self-education, a lot of self-learning, and a lot of that takes place outside of your formal education. So that never stops. Lukasz, other managers out there, when they're hiring experienced people, they still want to know what someone's doing outside of their work. It's not just about the 9 to 5. The self-learning never stops. Technology doesn't stop, and you've got to continue. So you need relevant industry skills. So whether it's consultancy, whether it's another type of role, you need a skill set that someone's going to pay you for. Security is a very, very big space, as you know, and I think you've got to really nail down what you're interested in. Being humble. I don't know, how do you describe this nicely?
Don't be a jerk.
Yeah, we'll cover this in a bit. Basically, there are some absolutely amazingly people that you'll meet at this conference. People that are speaking today, they've been in the industry 10, 20 years, they still remain humble. I've spoken with people that have been in the industry for 2 minutes, and just because they've suddenly got a job or now doing a role, their ego grows. And really, those people don't last, at least not in a nice culture, nice environment. And you've got to remain enthusiastic. There's going to be some tough times, and learning, education, you've got to keep that enthusiasm. So it's easier said than done, but those core values and whatever you're going to call them, if you can remain those, then you'll be in a good pathway.
So just on that humble kind of note as well. So let me tell you guys a little story. I was working for Context in the UK, and I was tasked with going to a university and describing to them how they should re-architect an entire network. So for those who don't know, I'll go into it in a little bit, but my background is from the network engineering space, and a little bit of like designing networks and maintaining them. So here I was sitting around this round tables, and I'm the expert, right? So we went around the room, it's like you usually do with introductions, and this person says, I've been a checkpoint administrator for 20 years, been a checkpoint admin for 10 years, I've been at the CCIE for this long, and CCIE for that long. It's just like a ridiculous amount of certifications and experience. And here I am, I was 10 years in to my professional life sort of thing, and I was like, well, you guys have more experience than I do, and I did this. So that's touching on that humble experience. But the difference is I'm a security. I've tested networks, I've seen a lot of the flaws, and I've seen it across many kind of vertical management, so to speak. Many industries, so it could be finance, could be aviation, could be primary industry, or whatever. So I said, I won't tell you guys how to configure your network or your firewalls, because you know that better than I do. You know your network better than I do as well. But I will tell you what we do as a red team and what we target. So in terms of like being humble, just keep that in mind. Like, you might be employed as a security expert, but there are other people in the industry that have been doing this for maybe a little bit longer, or maybe a little bit not as long, sort of thing. So keep that in mind as well. But on the passion side of things, I've conducted a few interviews in the last 6 months, and passion is one of the first things that I look for. What you're doing in your spare time, we'll go through some of the other components of it as well. What you're doing in your spare time, are you actually absolutely passionate about what you do? The fact that you're at a conference indicates that you're on the right track, which is great. Do you attend some other kind of meetups and stuff like that, which we'll go through as well? Can you learn by yourself, which is another massive factor? Do you have the skills that can be fundamentally used on client work? So the reality is, as I said before, around I describe the industry, you get paid for what you know. Our clients pay us as experts in the field, and if you don't know anything, you won't get paid for it. And that's the fundamental truth. So what I look for is of an employee me or candidate coming through is, can I use the skills that this person has on client engagements? And an internal role, what they're going to look for is, will this person be a good fit to the team and can they drive projects forward, or are they just going to be a blocker for everything as well, which we'll go through about the black and white approach. So generally there's a really good approach, it's called the SWAN, S-W-A-M, like the bird. So are you smart, do you work hard, are you ambitious, and are you a nice person? And that's generally what most people look for when you want to get into a role.
Thank you. This is a great show. So it's all about you. So I speak to, again, a lot of people, they want to get into the security industry, and my question is, okay, awesome, but what do you want to do? I want to get a job in security. I just need a foot in the door. Okay, but in what? You know, are you going to be a pen tester? Are you going to be an architect? There's so many different types of roles out there, and they require different types of skill sets. My advice is always try to take a step back and evaluate you as a person. What are your interests? What are you aligned to? Look at the different types of roles out there, and really look at what the characteristics of what's involved. Because again, if you're going to be doing a lot of self-studying, a lot of education, it takes a lot of time. You've got to be interested in this. If you're chasing it for the money, if you're chasing it for the wrong reasons. So recently, myself and Codingo set up a mentoring program, and it was interesting seeing some of the responses, asking people why they wanted to get into security, what are their actions, what are they doing about it. 60-70% of people wanted to be a pen tester, but their actions said otherwise. So again, we can talk about some of those things down the line as well, but pen testing, as good as it is, and again, this is a very technical, offensive, security-minded conference, but pen testing is one part of security. There are so many different parts out there, and to be honest, it's a small part of the industry. This industry doesn't need lots of pen testers. There's not enough jobs out there. So again, are you technical, are you less technical? And then look at the types of roles out there. Because there are, again, a lot of opportunities from GRC to DevSecOps, because you can be a developer who's interested in security, and it makes more sense for you to align your skills, or you can be a sysadmin. Again, utilise what you have and pivot that into the industry. And then learn those industry skills. You know, focus on what's interesting for you, and then become an expert, at least someone who's learning those skills in that space. And then, yes, certifications. So it's always an interesting topic, certifications, and it's one we joke about a lot. There aren't that many certifications that are valuable. That said, it does demonstrate that you're actually putting in the time and even money to learn something. So we've got a slide on certifications, we'll cover that as well.
Right, yeah, so we touched on passion a little bit, and I won't go through every single point because you can read. But so yeah, well, okay. Step one: learn how to read. So essentially, some of the questions that I kind of go through when I talk to candidates coming in is, one of the first ones is, do you have a home lab? For me, I do, and we kind of discuss this at length of what our home labs look like in the office. For me, I have like 5 different zones where I kind of put my wife into the non-trusted zone with her iPhone and stuff, and then I have like guest VLANs and all these other things as well. I got bored one weekend and I decided to make an elk stack and just feed in all the logs from like all these little endpoints and stuff I have floating around the internet as well, just to kind of see how that stuff works. So fundamentally, as I said, you get paid for what you know. If we get on the client engagement that has an elk stack or wants some kind of advice around how to secure it, it's like, oh yeah, I'll set that up, play around with it. I understand broadly how it is. I'm not an expert because the people that run it and maintain it and do all the things about it, they're the experts, but we come in as a security expert with that mindset. Do you have a GitHub account? I do. It's not very good, but you know, do you follow other people on GitHub as well? There's a lot of really brilliant developers here, and some people making some really good security tools. Do you develop your own tools? I do still, even in the management capacity. Do you publish or have any CVEs in your name? They're actually pretty decent. So those who've gone through the CVE process will know it's an absolute pain in the backside. We had recently one of the guys in the office went through the CVE process and it got done in 5 minutes, so I was absolutely surprised. Do you do capture the flags? Like Pen Testing Labs are a really good resource. Hack the Box and Phone Hub, it's free. All these things were not really available when I first got into Infosec, but then a lot of the things were not illegal when I got into Infosec. Do you have the relevant kind of certifications? We're touching on certifications and we'll kind of go into it in the next slide around things like the OSCP and some of the other ones that are around as well. It's like attending conferences. So everyone here is one step ahead, which is a really good sign. Make sure that you communicate that across to the person that you're applying for a job with, that you do attend conferences, you are actively in the community as well, because that shows that you do stuff outside hours and you're not just a punch in, punch out kind of person, because that's not what this industry is about. So certifications. So there's a long list there, I don't know if everyone can see it, but that's essentially most of the certifications that are around. A lot of them are pretty BS, to be frank. So let's do a little exercise here. We did this yesterday. See if this works. Right on.
See if the demo gods are on our side. This is just to highlight some of the BS that's out there.
If my internet works. There we go. So top 10.
Yep, top 10. Obviously there's no information on the internet that's misleading at all.
No, it's all super accurate. So let's have a quick look at what is recommended as like the number 2 Google search result. For people that don't know how to get into penetration testing or know how to get into Infosec, this is one of the first things we're going to do. And what is really absolutely heartbreaking is that CEH is on top of that list, right? So I'm talking as me, not as my company, so just keep that in mind. If anyone's video with, please edit this part out. And then, surprise, surprise, another EC Council licensed penetration test. Hands on, where's the license to penetrate, to hack? Unless you're working for ASD, as those have seen the stickers floating around. And some other random one I've never heard of. There's that one I've heard of a few times. But if we scroll down, go down, down. Oh, look, OSCP is last in that list. Surprise, right? So, it's just ridiculous. So this, unfortunately, is the state of affairs that we're in. Actually, I'll talk to the other ones.
And just a side note, so that website, I mean, obviously there's no business-minded to it. Just so happens that that website also sells courses for CEH and also offers a guaranteed pass. Good quality. And look, the other certs out there, again, they're relevant for different areas. So try to split it from sort of on the technical side, top in pen testing, through to blue team types of certs. So some of those are sort of SAN certs. They're not cheap. So if you can, get your company to pay for those. And then GRC and cloud. Cloud security, if you can, try and get it first place. AWS certs are very good to have. But again, certs, they're always a really interesting topic. I definitely recommend, if you're ever considering a certification, maybe just go onto LinkedIn, see who has those certifications, do a search. If you have a mutual connection or someone that has that certification, just get in touch with them and ask them, what value has it had? It's heartbreaking when you speak to someone who's invested time and money into certification to find out it's going to make zero difference. Certs are okay, they're just not going to get you a job. Again, it's about the skill sets. This does demonstrate a certain level. The CH one is always a topical one. I do make some jokes and LinkedIn from time to time. Pen testing managers are not going to take that seriously. I can talk about this a bit more openly than you can. I've spoken to a number of managers that literally said they'll chuck a CV in the bin if they see CH on the CV. So it's not saying it's a bad thing. Like if you're starting at a low level, you've got to start from somewhere. But
maybe just don't tell people you have it. So use it as a stepping stone.
Yeah, stepping stones are my advice.
And I'll touch on the CREST certifications as well. So those who are not familiar with CREST, it's actually a non-profit governing body sort of thing in Australia. It's all around the world. In my mind, the CREST UK model, the CREST global model is really good. Unfortunately, recently it's gone to kind of distribute in Australia because of a bit of a turf war of some description. But you can't actually do the certification without working for a CREST accredited company. So like Context and a lot of other companies around Australia are accredited companies, so you can actually sit through the exam. But I would kind of maybe hold off potentially on that certification for a little while, just because we'll see how the dominoes fall coming out of that. So going into how to get into the industry. So I'll tell you guys how I got into the industry. I've had a few questions so far this weekend around people just wanting to understand how me personally and how others that I know got into it. So the reality is I never actually wanted to be an IT at all. I wanted to be in the Air Force. So I was an air cadet. I was actively going through all the processes to join the Air Force, be a AvTech or electrical engineer or something like that. But my mum was kind of on my back about getting a tertiary education and not just going down the Defence Force path. So I said, just have a backup. So one of the things, I went through all the psych, the med, the physical, all that stuff at the Air Force, and they just went cold. So for 6 months I didn't hear anything back, and then luckily I enrolled in tertiary education doing IT because I was always passionate about it. So since I was about 13, I've always been playing around computers, pulling pretty much everything in the house apart, and most of the time it was working when I put it back together. I remember we bought, back in the day, it was like a 5-stack CD thing which like rotated around. I pulled that thing apart and it didn't work. I